I'm just a burnt out, burnout, burning out. Mesdames et messieurs, garçons et filles, jokers of all ages, welcome back to the worst fantasy show. We are kicking off the rookie series with the quarterback edition. We're going through the top 10 fantasy quarterbacks for Dynasty heading into this year of 2024. And for this special show, I have invited back a very special guest. He's been on Wildcard Wednesday. He is a co-creator of the FF universe. Welcome back to the show, Jesse Moeller.
I am what I am, nothing more than a man, nothing heavily within my command. Everything to lose, I reach out to you. Would you love a creature like me?
And there it is. There it is.
Welcome back to the show, Jesse.
Thank you for having me on, because we were talking off screen. You're gonna really enjoy those last 5 seconds, and I was so curious to see what it was. And it was Aaron's ugly mug staring me right in the face. I like that. That was a nice touch for you. So,
yeah. The AI generated version of him looks like the bad guy from Toy Story 2.
It's not the best. Yeah, those AI images we made for the TikTok.
First AI images.
God. They're too good, man. They're too good. That was great. I was really done. Thank you.
Man, so thank you so much for coming back on the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the work that you do with Aaron, whose giant face was in the end of that video?
So yeah, for those of you that know Aaron St. Dennis, also known as the FF Mad Scientist on Twitter, he is a bulldog of a worker. That guy is constantly working 24/7, 365. Like, he's really just as deep into the content as you will find basically anyone in the space. So it was his idea to create the fantasy football universe. We kind of put it all together the last offseason. We're rolling ahead with that, and we are arm deep into the rookie class right now. We've done about 100 breakdowns already. We're going forward full effect with that. So we are well into this class. We're talking we just did a thing on Michael Wiley, who's a guy who might not even be drafted the running back from Arizona. That's kind of where we're at in the process. So yeah, we're very deep with this fun stuff. But yeah, we love it. We're degenerates over there. So yeah, it's just a fun place to be. What can I say?
And you shout out to Aaron, my fellow Canadian. I only could do that because he's such a good guy, and we like to bust each other's balls. So that's just like a running gag that we have. Where we'll just fuck around with each other. So appreciate Aaron. That wasn't like a knock on him at all. In fact, the only reason I could do something like that is because, like I said, he's such a fucking awesome dude in real life. And then, like you said, absolute fucking grinder when it comes to the work. So love to see what you guys are putting out together. And yeah, doing the super deep dives on the rookies. We're not going to be going as deep here. We're going to go with just the top 10 fantasy quarterbacks. I feel like everybody's got the same number one, but I don't. So I'm actually going to let you start. You can talk about the de facto number one that I'm assuming you have number one, and then I will make my case for why my guy should be number one.
Okay, so I mean, we are going 10 quarterbacks deep, and I don't know about you, but that's way deeper than most people are going to go in rookie quarterbacks, just because, let's be real, it's really hard for quarterbacks to make an imprint in the NFL. There's no world where 10 guys in this class make an imprint. It's not realistic, but it's fun to talk about these guys and see which ones we favor, which ones we don't. But for me, it's I just want to keep it simple, stupid, as they always say, right? So it's Caleb Williams. He's by far he's up there with the Andrew Luck tier of prospects. He does everything anybody could want. He produced coming in, and he stayed consistently one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. I get it. There are some issues on the flip side. He holds the ball a little too long because he's trying to make those quote unquote. I know the lazy comp is the Mahomesian plays, but he's one of the few guys that can get out of structure and do those things with his arm where you're that's not something a quarterback should be able to do. So you pair his in-pocket ability He doesn't take sacks. He really find ways to get out and make plays happen. It's just overall, he's like the ideal quarterback. So if I was a team looking for a quarterback, and in this rookie draft, it's like Caleb Williams. Like I'm doing everything I can to get up to that 101 to get Caleb Williams. I think he's that special of a quarterback for myself personally.
So you hit the nail right on the head. The one negative that you said about him was that he holds the ball too long. And immediately that was my impression from watching his tape and from watching some of the game tape on him. Absolutely, he holds the ball too long, trying to make plays that's fine in college. That's just not going to work on an NFL level, especially if you get drafted by, let's just pretend he goes to the Bears with that offensive line. Like, that's not going to be, you're not going to be able to do the same kind of things. And the biggest thing for me is the mentality does strike me as a little bit Bo Callahan-esque. It is very much, and that's a comp from draft day for anyone out there who doesn't know what I'm talking about. Famously in the movie Draft Day, like the number one overall quarterback, they question his true mentality, like when shit's going wrong. And we've kind of already seen Caleb not react in the best way in that situation. And the NFL is just going to be a whole lot of that. And shout out to my guy Dustin Ludke, who's been on the show several times. Asked his question in a most unfortunate way. If people were rattled by that, just wait till he's actually like having bad games at an NFL level and see what kind of questions he starts getting from the regular annoying ass reporters out there. Because they're going to be a lot less kind to him, I think. And really, I'm very nervous about where he lands. Like, if he does land in Chicago, I don't believe in that coaching staff to elevate his game and kind of, make him, Andrew Luck retired early for a reason, like because the Colts never properly built the O-line and like the coaching was never the greatest and they just didn't take care of him. And ultimately, Andrew Luck actually never truly was what he was supposed to be at the end of the day. He had some very awesome moments. Again, retired early for a reason, never hit the true peaks that I think people expected from the next Peyton Manning. You know what I'm saying? And Caleb Williams is giving me a lot of those vibes. It's making me nervous. And that's why I actually think Jaden Daniels, who is a lot of people's number 2, he's my number 1. And a lot of it comes down to the mechanics, his mechanics versus Caleb Williams. First of all, not only is he's a little thin because he's 6'4" and I think 210, but he's faster, he's quicker, he's more lateral, but he's also just like, again, in the pocket, better mechanics. He's taking less steps on his drop backs. He's taking less steps on his rollouts. That's huge at the NFL level. That golden rule almost for quarterbacks these days is like the Tom Brady rule of 3 seconds and out. From the time you snap the ball, you have 3 seconds before an NFL defender is on your back and effing up the play. And he has the ability to run through that part of the offense. But then when he's doing his scrambles, yes, sometimes they're on designed runs, and then he's like, he popped a designed run for like 75 yards up the left hash. That's the kind of thing he can do with his speed. But more impressively, a lot of his runs are actually coming on scrambles where he's climbing the pocket, realizing nothing is there, run, because I have this 8 to 10 yards. And then the one thing I want to see him do at the next level is slide a little bit more after you get that first down. You don't need to go get the extra 10 to 15 yards. Just as soon as you get that first down, you're 2 yards past it, slide. Like that's, if he starts doing that, it's going to be insane. And I actually think because of where he potentially lands versus where Caleb Williams lands and, kind of the different expectations, I actually think Aiden Daniels could have a better career. And in terms of, we're talking about fantasy, he's going to have the rushing yardage, I feel like, right away, where Caleb Williams may not necessarily have that. And that's going to give him the boost where if I'm betting which one finishes higher in the QB ranks in terms of fantasy, I'm going to bet on Jaden Daniels probably more than I'm going to bet on Caleb Williams.
Yeah, and no, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But yeah, I like a lot of what Daniels offers, but the floor is just significantly lower with him. When we talk about guys like with sacks to pressure rate, Jaden Daniels has an eerily similar to a guy from that just played for Chicago, and that's Justin Fields. They're like doppelgangers on that aspect. Like you can scramble and you can avoid pressure, but if you take sacks, they're killers for you. So like I think the thing is like I'm more comping him to like the Justin Fields type player because he's not a finished product, and I get it. He's a little bit older, so he's got a few years on Caleb Williams, but he has the one really, really high-end peak season, which he just won the Heisman. Like, that's one of the best quarterback seasons you'll ever see. Outside of that, like, the floor is a lot lower than it was with Caleb Williams. Like, Caleb Williams' play ever since he stepped on the field was, like, about a 9 out of 10 the entire time. Jaden Daniels was all over the place. He had a season at Arizona where he had, like, over 10 interceptions, turned the ball over a lot, and this was a few years ago. He transfers over, and he gets, like, the playmakers that he lacked at Arizona State. I mean, he did play with Ricky Pearsall and stuff like that, who's a good player at Florida, but that's neither here nor there. He's playing with Malik Neighbors, who's going to be a top 5 pick. He's playing with Brian Thomas Jr. He's playing with those guys. So I'm more curious to see if those guys were elevating him this last year or if it's the flip side, if he was elevating them. And it's really hard to say just because we don't know, because those guys were just superior talents. Where the one thing he does really well on my product is his deep ball. His deep ball is fantastic. Like, that's the thing that you see on tape where he can chuck it and you have these guys who are birders down the field. Like, that's a match made in heaven. He does take some sacks, and that's the biggest issue. So that's my main concern with him. And some of his reads, he's a little bit behind on plays. So he just needs to clean it up. Like, and he's going to go to a team, like, more than likely or not, Washington or the Patriots. The Patriots is a little bit more worrisome just because they have no talent, but that he's a good player. And to your point about rushing, yeah, his rushing floor is a lot higher just because of the athlete he is. But I described, like, I think Danny Kelly said it, it's like watching a car crash, like watching him run, because you see him make these plays, and then he goes across the middle and absolutely gets blasted. And you're like, dude, you can't do this. You got to get down. You got to learn how to be more Russell Wilson on that aspect. So if he could do that and save himself from these vicious hits in the NFL, like, I think he'll have a long, productive career. So, yeah, I have him at 2. I like him a lot. I can't get there with over Caleb. But you know what? That's what this is all about, because we like each other. One of these guys.
No, and I love everything you said because I have all of those negatives in my description. The exact same thing you said. Needs to slide more. He is decisive, but his placement, his awareness sometimes could be a little bit better. I have the exact same thing about Neighbors and Thomas Jr., who I'm absolutely in love with. I have ranked higher than most. So, like, I asked the same thing. Is this a situation of was Neighbors and Thomas elevating him past where I think? But really for me, it came down to, eye test and the mechanics. And like I go back to, you talk about taking sacks. I think what translates at that next level is his skill set. Like I said, the agility and the quickness and the mechanics, the way he was having his steps in the pocket versus Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, too often I was watching do 5 to 7 foot step drop backs and then trying to roll out and like trying to do this, trying to do that. And again, that works at the college level, and he will have flash plays even at an NFL level because his arm is that good. And this isn't to take away from Caleb Williams, but I question if he ends up being the one taking more sacks at the next level. And then I also, like I said, question the mentality and toughness because, like, as much as Jaden Daniels had his struggles, it's almost like he just kept on smiling, finally landed in a good spot, and, had his best season. And I think Washington is going to take him because I think Caleb Williams is going to go 1. I do think Washington is just going to end up taking Jaden Daniels at 2, and the Patriots are going to have to settle for whoever's there at 3. So that's kind of how I'm projecting that out. And if he lands in Washington, I really love it because I think they're an underrated team in terms of the talent that's already there. When you talk about Terry McLaurin and Brian Robinson in the backfield, you have some pieces to work with. They can add other things. They're bringing in, I think they brought in Kingsbury to replace Bieniemy. That I'm a little iffy on, but ultimately it seems like they're going with a change. And I think Kingsbury specifically even mentioned that he wanted a mobile quarterback, which to me is like almost saying like, I'm taking Jaden Daniels if he's there. If by some act of God it ends up being Caleb Williams for some reason, I don't see that really happening, but I think he'd be fine with either or. But I think he's basically signaling that, yeah, we're taking Jaden Daniels at 2. So I'm projecting it as such a little bit. I feel like with the quarterbacks, it's a little more easy to see how that plays out, whether it's a team that trades or it's Chicago themselves that takes Caleb and then Jaden goes too. I feel like that's, for me, it's pretty locked in. I'd be really surprised if anything else happened beyond that. But yeah, we basically our 1 and 2, I'm assuming, is just flipped. So we can move on to number 3. You can go first.
All right. So speaking of a guy who's mobile, who for some reason it seems like a lot of people don't realize this, and like I'll just transition to who it is. It's Drake May out of North Carolina. The guy's an extremely mobile guy, and I don't know if it's the fact he's a white boy, so you watch him and you're like, he's not going to be that athletic, right? You kind of get into the stereotypes of players, which we can get into from time to time, but his career rushing yards per season, like he had almost 500 this last year. The year before, he had almost 700 rushing yards. And that was when he had his best season by far, where Drake May was in the conversation at this time last year, where everyone's like, he could be the number 1 overall pick if he has another season like he did that year. He kind of fell off and struggled a little bit this last year. Still solid season. It wasn't anything bad, but he lost Josh Downs. He lost some players. Tez Walker, who was the guy who was transferring there, didn't like, he had some issues with the NCAA, and there was like this whole just befuddled situation where Tez Walker missed the first few games. It really, like, you watched it and then you're like, all right, he comes back, he gets Tez Walker. You're like, all right, cool. He gets his best player. He's going to be an NFL wide receiver, who's talked about. And then he actually gets worse during the season. It's really worth watching this Drake May tape. If you want to watch just an abysmal game, go watch him play North Carolina State, and you're just watching this tape and you're like, this is not pro level today. Like, I don't know what's going on here. Yeah, he's more variance. He's similar to Jaden Daniels in that aspect of like, the guy has really high highs, but some of his processing, some of the reads that he does, you're just like, you're missing these plays that you should be making. But overall, like, he has the arm strength, he has the size, because he's one of the guys that's actually a big quarterback. He's like 6'4", 230. There's not a lot of those guys in this class. A lot of these guys are short and or skinny. So he's more that prototypical build you're looking for a quarterback. He can make all of the throws, though. Like, he has the plus arm strength, everything you want. So, like, getting his talent, who I still think he's a very, very good quarterback prospect, at like number 3 or 2, whoever takes him there, I think they're going to be very happy. It's just, if they could set him up for success, which is kind of my question with Jaden Daniels, right? If they could set these guys up for success at the NFL level, like, you have a potential of like a superstar quarterback for the next 10 to 15 years. I don't know if it's going to hit or not, but like, the talent and the tools are there, where I think a team's getting way ahead of themselves. They're taking anyone else at number 3 pick.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also have him at number 3, and I have a lot of the same things. I wrote exactly almost verbatim what you just said. Big and tall, traditional build, good vision, nice arm, surprising athlete, good pocket and good reads for the most part, but needs to get better with his timing and release at the next level, and also needs to just improve his overall awareness. And that was the other thing I had last, was the peaks are high and the valleys are low. So it's kind of a lot of the same stuff. But the thing that you said about setting these guys up for success, it's like, I think it's ridiculous to expect any quarterback to be Mahomes, and that includes Caleb Williams.
Yeah, that's
absurd.
If you
do not set up Caleb Williams for success, then he will not succeed. Like, the NFL is not the NBA. First of all, these guys are getting hit, and this is a 11 to 12 man process a lot of the time, where, you know, all the moving parts have to be moving correctly for this to work. Like, you can't just expect to drop in Caleb Williams and, oh yeah, this is just going to completely, like, he's just going to elevate the shit out. It doesn't work like that, especially at the rookie level. And even Mahomes, I feel like Mahomes is overrated how easy it was for him to just walk into the NFL. He didn't just walk. He redshirted behind Alex Smith, one of the smartest quarterbacks, for like almost an entire season. I think it was actually the full season. So he basically had a redshirt year, and he had Andy Reid, and he already had Travis Kelce entrenched on the team. Like, he had all these things already in place, And then, yes, his own talent then elevated that to an even higher level. But it's not like he just walked in to some bum ass franchise with a fucking shit ass coach, no talent, and like what you know what I'm saying? It's like, and he just did it from day one like that. That's not what happened at all. His season was like an immaculate season, but it wasn't his rookie season, and so it's not a rookie record technically for a reason. You know what I'm saying? So like it's
so interesting with
it's
these
the
guys,
way
right?
that people just like gloss over that history of like, okay, well, yeah, sure. I'm sure if you took a generational prospect like a Caleb Williams and did not put the weight of the world on him in his first season and let him sit behind a smart veteran quarterback that's been, around the block and like all, I think people forget Alex Smith was a first overall pick who had to go through his own trials and tribulations and had a lot to offer just in terms of like veteran leadership and advice and all of those intangibles that he could pass on to Mahomes before Mahomes ever had to go on an NFL field. And it helped elevate his processing. Mahomes was supposed to be this like prototype guy that wasn't fully developed and it's like that's why sometimes it's like with a Drake May or a Jaden Daniels, it's silly to me to be like, oh, well, he can't do it because he needs a system around. It's like, well, guess what? Caleb Williams isn't going to do it without a system around him either. Like, you don't just Tom Brady's don't exist, and Tom Brady didn't do it until he was like a 10-year fucking veteran and knew the game like the back of his hand. So some of these comps and compare and like these parables of like what NFL quarterbacks should be in their rookie season, I just find it outlandish.
Well, and we just saw, speaking of Mahomes, like he was like a check down like game manager this season. He completely changed his game because he realized what they needed to do offensively. And that's the good thing with these truly elite quarterbacks at the NFL level. They know what they need to do and they can change their game to win. A lot of these guys coming in, like we expect them to do that. But realistically, the nice thing about Mahomes is he was discounted because he went to Texas Tech. He also played in the air raid system. And by the way, NFL teams hate the air raid system. So there's a bunch of question marks about him because he was like the 13th overall pick. By the way, if he went first overall, he does not get a chance to sit behind and learn that way. So this is a completely different situation. But yeah, I'm with you. Like the NFL just kind of just didn't understand what Caleb Williams offered immediately. I mean, there were a lot of teams that are interested, but the fact he was going 13th overall compared to 1, like that tells you kind of where they thought he was as a prospect and what they thought of him. So it's just a little bit different with him. But yeah, I agree. Like you got to set these guys up for success. Like I get it. There's very rare to have a Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. Like you're more than likely you're going to get somewhere in the middle ground where it's like a Jared Goff, or you get someone like, tangibles like Justin Fields. Like those guys come along a lot more
often. So number 4 is we talked about it a little bit pre-show, and this is where we're going to deviate wildly. And this happens to me all the time. So I talked about my process, but because I did it earlier this morning, breaking the fourth wall, even though this is the first one that's going to release tomorrow, I filmed the tight end one earlier today. And, was talking about a little bit my process of like, okay, obviously I'm not a Devi guy. I'm not an intense Dynasty guy either. So this is where I kind of come in on all these guys. I don't have preconceived notions of what they did in college or where they went here and I just go off of, so basically like obviously I take YouTube highlights and I look for the bad in that. I take a couple game tapes, condensed games. I'm not trying to watch the whole fucking thing. I'll take condensed game tapes, watch 1 or 2 of those, and then I'll look at, after I've done that, then I'll look at like if they did combine, draft reports, a little bit from like some other high profile Dynasty sites, get a read on the guys because like I said, I don't know their full backstory, and then I'll go from there. So for me, the biggest thing is always eye test. And the guy that I had to go intense with it because he just passes the eye test for me is Joe Milton III. And I know that nobody else in the world is going to have him at number 4 on their rookie draft boards. But he, to me, has higher ceiling than a lot of the guys that are going to come after this, even potentially more than a Drake May, who we just talked about, because, and yes, he is much more raw, undeveloped, has a lot of issues, you could say, and also is a little bit in that category of he's older. He's 24. But man, besides the fact that his arm is built like a literal cannon, like he can drop 70-yard passes while winking at you. The thing that really stood out to me was he's he's a little bit more refined as a passer than I think people give him credit for. Like, the comparison directly, obviously, with what happened last year is Anthony Richardson, who also came in as a raw prospect, who is similarly big and athletic the way Joe Milton is. But honestly, the way Joe Milton plays, he was more careful, is how I would put it almost, than Anthony Richardson. And Anthony Richardson is an excellent player, but takes a lot of risk, I feel like, with his throws and also with his body that I didn't see Joe Milton necessarily taking. And maybe that's a benefit of the fact that he is 24 coming into this draft as opposed to being 20 or 21. Having a little bit of extra years of wisdom. And I think really what's going to happen, this is me projecting outward a little bit, but I think as we go through this whole process, he's going to get drafted higher than people think. And once that happens, he's then going to get drafted in fantasy drafts, especially in Superflex, higher than people think. And it's going to be based off the potential. And I think he can achieve that potential. From, like I said, from what I saw, he's athletic. He needs to be a little stronger in the pocket. But to me, he's a little bit more of a natural thrower. And with development, if he falls in the right situation, he could literally be one of the most dangerous passers in this entire class.
I mean, yeah, I'm with you. If you're talking about pure arm strength, it's the tier of basically one. Like, this is what we're talking about with pure arm strength. The guy his arm was literally, there's a bazooka on his arm, and he can launch it. I think at the combine, that throw, the air yards on that throw, beat any throw in the NFL this last year. Like that, the deep bomb, he just said, just chucked it. It was like 73 yards. The second best one was like Josh Allen to like Gabe Davis. It was like 70 or something like that. That's the arm strength he offers. My concerns with him are his reading ability, his and when he gets flustered, what he does with it. So like a lot of times he'll miss reads because he's kind of a slow processor. And if you're a slow processor at the quarterback level, you have to be able to be anticipatory and you have to be willing to take gambles to make up for that, because otherwise you'll lose like wide receivers running across her. If you don't hit it right, it's gone, because there's that window in the NFL. It's a lot tighter. If you look back to his Michigan tape, it's a guy that was very raw. Like this was even with Jim Harbaugh, right? Like a guy who everyone says the quarterback whisperer. He was really raw there, and he just couldn't figure out. He was just throwing 115-mile-an-hour heaters at wide receivers every time. There was nothing like he wasn't able to tear it down. He was actually just launching balls. So he's more of a thrower than he is a passer. I think that's the best way I can say about it, because he's not really like that refined and technical. But yeah, if you're talking just strictly arm strength, it's going to get him drafted because teams will chase it. So I think at the worst case, he's a late round flyer. Someone takes just a dart throw based on his arm. I do like some of the things he does because, he is a big guy. He can't scramble. He can do a few things. But overall, at being 24 years old, I just have a ton of question marks. And if you're this old already and you're not more of a finished product, it's really hard. And we'll get into the other guys who are older guys in the class as well. It's kind of a lot of the same questions. It's like, all right, why did it take you this long to develop? If we get you into an NFL scheme, how's that going to look? Is that development going to get accelerated? Because there's a clock with these guys, right? You're 24. By the end of your rookie contract, 4 years, you'll be 28, 29, right? So you kind of play that in your head and you go from there. But yeah, I do love this guy's arm strength. Like if we could somehow get this guy a little bit more accuracy and touch, like I would be like, all right, this guy's first round pick for sure. No doubt about it in my mind. I think he's just a very interesting prospect for sure.
Well, and for me, I want to make it clear too. Again, we're talking about fantasy, and it's not just the arm strength. Like his athletic ability is also in he's basically in the same tier as Jaden Daniels in terms of he's pretty close to Anthony Richardson. Like he is big, fast. Dude is just very again. the Cam Newton comps are going to be there. The Anthony Richardson comps are going to be there of the fast, mobile, but kind of slow processing, not always accurate, takes chances quarterback. And it's just, does he land in a good situation where they take advantage of that or not? And, again, I've said this throughout as I've been filming this whole series, but obviously this is like the one that's going to release first. So again, the caveat of these are pre-draft lists. These are going to get blown the fuck up as soon as the draft happens. So it's like none of this is set in stone. If he goes in the 6th round or less, like I'm obviously going to drop him way down on my board. But I think an NFL team is going to fall in love with him. And they're going to be like, oh, let's take the chance in late 4, early 5. And if that happens, especially if it happens in a situation where the starter is not an entrenched starter, if he goes to Tampa Bay in the 4th or 5th round, that is a very interesting landing spot, especially because then, I do think they are going to retain Baker Mayfield for at least a year or two. So it's like you don't have to have him start right away. And quarterbacks, just in general, I mean, you can give them till like 35 for an athletic style quarterback, like let's say 34, 35. So even if he takes a red shirt year, you're talking about 10 years, from 25 to 35. That's even if you got 7, like that would be fine for an NFL team and even finer for your dynasty team because again, the rushing ability and the big play ability, there's a lot of leagues that give the bonus for the 40, 50-yard plays and the rushing hack for the quarterbacks. And he offers both of those as potential. So again, obviously it's going to be a caveat of landing spot, but like, even though he's older, I almost feel like some guys just take longer to develop. And it's like, age isn't, and this is just in life in general, like age isn't always reflective of how fast and quickly you develop in life. And, I could see him actually not necessarily vibing with Harbaugh because even though Harbaugh is a quarterback whisperer, he prefers the Alex Smith to the Colin Kaepernick. He wants more of the game manager where it's like, so I don't know that necessarily jived. It's like I said, if he falls in the right place with a little bit higher draft capital than people are expecting, he's going to shoot up fantasy boards. And I'm going to be definitely taking risks on him in super flex leagues. Anywhere in like late 3rd, early 4th round, if he's going there, like to me, that's all day. Take that chance because it's like, you're probably not losing much other if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, 100%. Like I'm with you. Like if you get him there, it's totally fine, right? Because you're not, the opportunity cost is not bad. If it's just because a lot of these quarterbacks we're talking about getting punished in the 1st round of like starts, like rookie picks and they're like top 4 startup picks. So it's all about value related with these guys. And if he jumps up, then it's a completely different discussion. Like if he goes, like you're talking about, a lot higher in the draft than we all expect him to go, then that changes kind of the trajectory of how we view him, and he will be like vaulting up draft boards if that's the case for sure.
And a lot of the guys we're going to talk about from here on out, like, yes, they are, to me, it's like every guy we're about to talk about now is, average to above average NFL starter or backup. To me, that's like the ceiling for like all these guys that we're about to hit on. So before we go through the rest of the list, let's get your number 4.
It's JJ McCarthy, and I'll say he's the one guy. This is the cutoff of like last guys I see who can be a difference maker quarterback at the next level. I don't know if it's going to happen, but he's more of a mystery box quarterback. And yeah, he was not asked to do a lot of Michigan because that team was so good. We saw it last year. He literally, like, you look at his passes per game last season, he was throwing like half of the passes because like in the first half it was going fine. The second half they would just wear on teams and they didn't need him to do anything. So his numbers look significantly worse across the board, but like he still increased as he got better. He came in as a rookie. He played a little bit here and there, 57% completion percentage. Came in as a sophomore last year, 64%. And then this last year, he jumped to 72%. So you saw the progression in that offense with the Harbaugh offense. If you watch the tape, the one thing you notice is he can make all the throws you're looking for at the NFL level. There are question marks with him just because we don't know enough about him. But the fact he's younger, he's a lot younger than these older guys. He just brings a different dimension, I think. And when I was watching the tape, because I went in and I was like, I'm not really interested in JJ McCarthy. Like, he just didn't do much, right? And then I kind of like watching L22, and I'm like, all right, that's a professional throw. I see him make a read. He like looks off a safety, and then he throws a 30-yard bomb down the field, and I'm like, okay, there's more here. So I think from the NFL level, they're going to be like intrigued by kind of what he can offer, and they've seen bits and pieces from him. So there are a lot of question marks just because we didn't see enough in his time in Michigan because they didn't need him to do a lot. But I think from a pro-style quarterback, he's kind of a guy you're looking for where he's a little thinner. I think he was listed at 202. I think he came in at like 218. So we kind of checked the question marks off about his size because he's like 6'3", 218. So he's a more bigger build body guy than we thought. It's just there's a lot to like, I will say, about him. I'm not in love with him, but I think he's the last guy I'm willing to be like as an NFL team. All right, I will spend a first-round pick on this guy. I'll take the gamble and go from there.
So I actually have him at number 6. And there are things to like about him. You said one of the things you say he checks the box physically. Yeah, he came in at 6'2", 219, but he's got baby hands.
I mean,
he's got the smallest hands in the combine here with little 9-inch hands. No, I'm joking.
Yeah,
I don't think that actually matters at all. I thought it was a funny little note that he had the smallest measured hands.
It's like the Kenny Pickett thing with the Arthur meme with just the tiny baby hands. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Ironically enough, I kind of overlooked it, but Drake May had only 9 1/8.
Yeah, it's a little surprising, right? Because he's a bigger guy. You would expect to
exactly.
Penix has that. By the way, Penix has like the biggest head you ever see. Like they're monster hands. You're like, okay.
yeah, exactly. McCarthy and Drake May, part of the baby hands club. But my number 5, actually, because I feel like he is a little bit better than JJ McCarthy and has, especially if he lands in a good situation, like we literally just saw. I mean, I looked it up and based on his college career, but like y'all just saw Bo Nix out of Oregon. Basically the same size, 6'2", 214, except he's got bigger hands. He's got 10 1/8. But he's got a really good arm. He's got pocket presence. He's athletic. He can make moves, tight throws, works in the system, works off script okay as well. But I think he really showed out, obviously, when he made the switch. He didn't develop at Auburn for the couple of years that he was there and then lands in Oregon, and all of a sudden he's a Heisman quality player, drops a crazy 4,500 yard, 45 touchdown season. So, I mean, that was incredibly impressive. And to me, he was just like that one step higher of like, I think JJ McCarthy has a lot of flaws, and I think he's going to get overdrafted and potentially in a situation where he's asked to do more than he's actually capable of. I would love to see him get a redshirt year. I don't know that he's going to be afforded that because of the hype going around him. Whereas Bo Nix, I feel like could land in a really good situation and end up being like Jared Goff level starter. And that's not a knock against Jared Goff. I think Jared Goff is tremendously underrated. What he did with the Rams and then what he's doing now with the Lions. If I was an NFL quarterback, I would take that career. And I think that's kind of the level that I see Bo Nix. I think JJ McCarthy has the potential to maybe be at that level, but I feel like Nix is more solidified already of like, okay, well, we saw it at Oregon, and if he's surrounded with the right pieces, like, again, you mentioned that McCarthy was almost like protected in a sense by Harbaugh. Like the thing I have him as is he's a game manager plus. Really needs to tighten up his whole game, especially his timing throws. But like, you mentioned he has flashes. He does a lot of good stuff. It is technically a pro style offense. So he does do things of like looking off the safety and then throwing it to the wide receiver downfield. Like he does good things. So if you flipped these two for me, I honestly wouldn't care at all. But like my personal opinion is that Bo Nix in the right situation is better than JJ McCarthy in the right situation in college. And I think that's going to transcend at the next level.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. Like there's a entire range of outcomes. He's definitely better than McCarthy. That would not shock me. It's just he's another older guy who, if you look at his Auburn tape and you compare it to Oregon, you're like, this is not the same guy. Like Auburn, this guy, he came in, he had a high pedigree. He came in, he was just not like you were not going to project him to be an NFL quarterback. Like he was lucky to be a backup quarterback. What Oregon does really well is they masquerade your weaknesses. And like that's shout out to that coaching staff because this is also a thing with Troy Franklin. They don't have these guys do what they're bad at. So like Oregon did a great job. He basically get the play call and like that's the whole other thing where like the team makes the play call, you look over, he does it, they decide for you. So you're not doing a lot of like pro style stuff with that situation. But overall, that scheme, I think I struggle with the most because they do a great job of hiding weaknesses better than almost any other scheme of college teams. So that's where I was like, all right, how much of this is Bo Nix or how much is this a scheme? And it's usually a mixture of both, right? You have a good scheme, you have a good player, you put those together, you take it here or there. I just do have question marks about with him if he could do some of the same stuff he was doing at the college level, if that's translatable. And I'm not 100% sure it is with him. So that's why he's my QB5, he's QB6. I have him below Penix one spot, but yeah, they're back to back, basically a lot of the same guys with those two. But yeah, for him, I like some of the stuff you're talking about with him. Overall, it's just I just leave with more question marks with him. And if I leave with more question marks than strengths with you, I'm always like, I'm gonna let the NFL decide how you value this player. Like I value him as like a second round pick, but if they want to take the first round pick, like somewhere like Tampa Bay you talked about before, I think that'd be great. You can learn behind Baker. Or you put him in one of these like teams that are competitive. You let him go behind Jared Goff. We talked about, right? Like you learn for a few years and do something like that. I think that could do wonders for him. So yeah, and if he turns into a Jared Goff like player, I think that would be great. It's entirely possible he's a good player. So overall, yeah, I like Bo Nix. I'm not gonna knock you on that at all.
So we've kind of been like flying through the list. I kind of skipped all the way to 6. I think we were actually though still at 5. So who's your number 5?
It's Michael Penix. Although the one thing that Penix does better than anybody in this class, and this goes all the way back to Indiana, is he climbs the pocket incredibly well. Like his pocket management is awesome. He's had 4 season-ending injuries, so I know we have to worry about that. But he got cleared by the NFL, so I'm not super worried. If you're cleared by the NFL, that means you could play at the NFL level. They're not like, all right, this is a massive red flag. Like we had last year with the running back prospect, who I am blanking on his name, out of Syracuse. He had like serious injury concerns and like his heart was an issue. So they were like, all right, by the way, this is what it is. Penix got cleared by the medicals there. So like we don't have a concern with him moving forward. I think he does a lot of stuff good in the pocket and he avoids sacks like better than anybody. So I know everyone says the weakness is him like under pressure, he falls apart, but he knows how to like continue drives. And I think that's a thing NFL teams like love is the fact like you don't take these negative plays. You don't turn over the ball a lot. What you do is you continue drives. You continue it forward. So, like, instead of taking a 3rd and 5 sack, right, you'll just check it down and get the ball off and you get the first down. Or if it's 2nd and 7, you don't take that sack. You see it 4 yards and you move and you give yourself another chance. Because if you go from 2nd and 7 to 3rd and 17, that's basically a drive killer. So, like, I think he does a lot of those things well as an NFL level, and I think he could be a fine NFL quarterback. His placement is really good, and he has the arm strength. So, like, you put all that together, and you're working with the frame of a guy who could potentially be, like, a starter in this league for 10, 15 years. It's just he desperately, desperately needs a line because if he has another, like, shoulder injury or knee injury, like, is basically done. Like, he's had major injury with those things. So, like, that is my one flag as an NFL team. I would want to first-round pick on him because of that. But, like, what he did at Washington in the last 2 years, we saw it against Texas. Like, you watch the Texas tape of Washington, and that's just, like, some super high-end stuff. Then you see what happened in Michigan where they just absolutely obliterated that offensive line, and it's like, all right, here's the other side of the coin where there's good and bad. So I think that's the best way of just highlighting him is, like, watch those two games back-to-back, and then you kind of get an idea of who he is as a player.
It's funny because I feel like we're flying really fast through my list. But it's because you keep naming the guys that because I had Joe Milton that, was higher, it bumped everybody down a spot. And so I have Michael Penix actually at 7. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing for me was you mentioned being, he's part of that older club too. He's 24. Mm-hmm. Yes, but with the multiple injuries, definitely doesn't help. But, it's funny because I think maybe this is just my personal thing. I hate lefties. I really hate lefty quarterbacks. It throws off the entire system for an offensive coordinator. You literally have to do everything backwards because of how they see the field. Just think about the body mechanics. It's looking this way versus looking this way. You're going to be asking your tight ends, your wide receivers, all your formations basically have to flip and be mirrored. And yes, it can fuck with the defense, but they usually catch up to that. And a lot of times it just ends up causing your own offense to make more mistakes than they normally would. So that's one thing. And it's funny because it's almost like because he's a lefty, his mechanics are slightly off. Like when you watch him, but it's in the sense of it's very much like a basketball player with a fucked up shot, but it goes in. It's like he's efficient. I'm not saying he's bad, but it's almost Phillip Rivers-esque, but from a lefty of like his arm shouldn't be doing what it's doing. Like if a perfect NFL quarterback coach would be trying to get you to do a certain type of arm mechanic and his arm just like doesn't want to do it. I don't know if that's because of maybe the injuries he's had to adjust or whatever it is, but it was just something that I noticed on his tape. But like to me, that all of those things would scare me as an NFL GM. I think his draft capital is actually going to get knocked down. I don't think he's going to go in round 1. I think he's round 2. I could even see him sliding to like early round 3 because again, the offensive coordinator / head coach that takes him is knowing in the back of their minds that like, you know, I almost have to take this guy and make him my starter to like change the offense to like run to the left, or I'm an AFC East team and I need a practice dummy for when we're playing Tua. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like,
100%.
It's such a weird, wonky thing for me. But we'll jump back to whoever is your number 6.
So it's Bo Nix. I know I was kind of ragging on Bo Nix a little bit, but like I think he's a good prospect. He does a lot of things well, but like I just don't know how to translate a lot of what like his strengths are as a quarterback compared to like I see it a lot easier with Penix, and that's the differentiator between the two. Like I can see that just working out a lot easier for him than I can Bo Nix, and it's also like I still struggle with that Auburn tape. That stuff is there, and it's scary. Like it terrifies me. I can see that tape, and I'm like, you're not an NFL quarterback. Like so. There is a little bit of preconceived notion with the Auburn tape compared to the Oregon tape. Like they're worlds apart, but I'm like, he's still that guy somewhere in there. Like, you know what I mean? So I go in with that like kind of issue with him. But like he does a lot of things well. Like I'm not going to be like, oh, he's a bad quarterback or anything of that nature. No, he's good. He literally took the Oregon Ducks and they almost went to the national championship 2 years in a row. He has the arm strength. He's a good athlete. Like he does have good ball placement on the outside. All of those things are there. So like you kind of take the good and the bad, you put it together and you come up with a little recipe and you're like, all right, where do I have all of my guys? For me, he's 6, but like him and Penix are basically the same tier of guys. I just slightly prefer Penix to him. So that's kind of where because it's a pretty similar story with both those guys, like how they succeeded in the NFL or to the NFL. So like they're basically just back to back. That's a tier of guys right there for me.
To be fair, like I like Penix better, but I'm so concerned about the age and the injuries and the mechanics of everything to the left, Beyonce style of like. That's why I think that an NFL team's gonna be like it's easier to just take Bo Nix and work around his flaws. But we don't have to beat that dead horse. Let's just go right to who do you have at number 7?
All right, so let's talk about Spencer Rattler here. I struggled once I got past 6 because I was like, all right, we could chase the arm strength for Milton. Like I could do that. I could go for that. I was like, I'm gonna take Rattler, who has the pedigree. He doesn't have the arm level of Milton. No one does. Like that's just not fair to compare anybody to that arm strength because he was given that gift. But Spencer Rattler does a lot of good things well. He's a good anticipatory thrower as a quarterback. So you see him. He'll lead guys to the right spot and put them in a good position to win. And that's what I liked so much about Penix tape is because you're giving your wide receivers the ability to get yak on plays. So if you're doing that as a quarterback, you're extending a pass play even more. Like that's kind of what we want from our quarterbacks. So you put that together. He's an efficient thrower. It doesn't take him a super long wind up. Like he's not going to be like, oh, over the top. He's quick with his release. He does those things well. Obviously, there's concerns like why he lost the job with Oklahoma because he struggled. If we remember, back a couple of years ago, he was the front runner for the 101 pick and the Heisman winner. And then that all went to shit, as we say. And then Caleb Williams took over, and it was like, all right, sayonara. Nice on you, Rattler. He went to South Carolina, and he was actually not too bad last year. Like, he kind of figured it out, and he established himself with a team that had some talented NFL players that are going to get drafted this year. And he made it work. So, like, you kind of come back on Spencer Rattler, where we were in early on, kind of out the end of the Oklahoma run, and then he comes back, and you're like, you know what? Okay, there's enough here to like. So, like, that's why I have him in my QB7. I think he's the most likely of all of these remaining guys to be a guy that gets a shot and could possibly develop something at the NFL level.
I have him right there at number 8. So it leads perfectly into, and it's funny because his tape was by far the funniest to watch to me, because this man ran a 4.95 at the 40. He basically ran the same time as an offensive lineman. I'm pretty sure that I could run a 4.95. Like, and people were like talking shit when I said that in high school I could run a 4.5. Let me preface that, yeah, I could actually run. I was surprisingly fast, and I could run probably like a 4.5 or a 4.6. Like between that, maybe, you know what I'm saying? Like 4.5, high 4.5s. But I want to preface also, I'm 5'10. You know, at most, like if technically I'm 5'10 3/4. So like if I was in an NFL draft, they would say I was 5'11. But at that time, I was like 180 pounds. I was like 18 years old. I was the peak of my athletic ability. I actually was like a pretty good athlete. I was captain of the football team. And it's like, and someone said like, oh, you ran it faster than Dre Greenlaw. Dre Greenlaw is 6'3" and 250 pounds. I damn well did run it faster than him. Like the fact that it was even remotely close just tells you how much amazingly better of an athlete Dre Greenlaw is than I am. The fact that it would even be anywhere remotely close, technically speaking, at my size for like NFL, I should be running sub 4.4. But no, I was running like like I said, high 4.5 was like my fucking best time like that I ever put out. And that's like, again, in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. The school doesn't even exist anymore. They tore the bitch down. Shout out to Sir James Dunn Eagles.
It's like, we're throwing it back. No, like, yeah, it's funny with we talk about these guys are slow. If you watch I don't know if anybody saw the Cat Williams running the 40. That man was doing his best to get there, and I think he ran like a 4.97. And you're like, hey, that a boy. Well done.
That's fine. That's what I'm saying. Like, yo, I bet, like I said, I would bet you I am as athletic right now in my decrepit state as Cat Williams is. Like, I would say me and Cat Williams are probably fairly equal. I know he's shorter than I am because I think he's like 5'8". So he's got them little legs, you know what I'm saying? I actually get like I also do this thing where it's like the way that I run, I get almost like really on the balls of my toes to where it's like my feet barely touch the ground. So it's like, anyways, it's just like if Cat Williams can run a 4.97, fucking Spencer Rattler at 4.95 is actually hysterical. But I'm watching the tape, and every time this man is climbing the pocket and he's escaping and he's running, he's the Audric Estime of quarterbacks.
Poor Estime.
Like,
poor Estime.
They get close to him, the defender. It's like that scene in Justice League where the Flash starts using his powers and he thinks he's gonna have it on Superman, and Superman just pulls this shit, turns around,
like.
And starts trying to fight him in the slow-mo.
You're just like,
this is like that.
I underestimated it. Yeah, exactly. You see that with these guys for sure. It's like, you're not as athletic. Well, some of the guys would like, you watch the tape and you get the 40, like the combine, and you're like, all right, something's not jiving here. Like we talk about like Bucky Irving, the running back out of Oregon. That dude's fast as hell, and then he runs at the combine, and you're like, what's going on here? Like, you're super athletic on the field, and then you come and put like one of the worst combine performances we've seen in a long time. It's like, all right, I think you're better than this, but clearly you had a bad day, my friend. Like, that happens. Sometimes they just have terrible days.
But yeah, it was just really funny to me, like how often he ran the ball for a guy that ran basically a 5-second 40. So I just wanted to throw that in there. But yeah, the only other thing was, he's the one thing is he's a smart passer, but he doesn't have. Unfortunately for him, like if he had even a touch of Milton's arm, that would really help, because way too often he's underthrowing the passes because he just literally physically can't get them there. Sometimes it's because he's trying to throw through contact, but it's just a lot of times it felt to me like, at 6'2" he just was trying to muscle the ball there, and it was not. A lot of times the wide receivers having to come back and make the play on the ball as opposed to just dropping it in the bucket over the top. So that was the one other thing. Little bit of a lack of arm strength. But otherwise, like pretty good placement for the most part. Like, again, a lot of decent decisions. To me, he's a good, not great. He's high quality backup, is I think like what he's going to be for sure. Especially to start. But he seems also like the kind of guy where it's like eventually starter's going to get injured. He's going to get a couple shots and he's going to play better than people expect. And people are going to be like, should Spencer Rattler be the starter? So just wait for those articles in 2000.
Yeah, 100%. Somebody, that's going to come at some point. The starter goes down. They're like, ooh, Spencer Rattler. And you're like, yeah, I don't know about that one, my friend. But sure, let's run this out and see how it plays.
So that was your 7, my 8. Let's go to your 8.
All right, it's Joe Milton. If you could combine Spencer Rattler and Joe Milton into one guy, we would be cooking with gas here. Like they kind of like offset each other in what they do, like that they excel at. Yeah, I just have a ton of question marks about Joe Milton, like his processing ability, his inability to really like with his arm strength, like he leans on it so heavily. He's like, guess what? Here comes the fastball. Like it's basically like the catcher's just throwing ones down there, and I'm like, dude, I need you to throw a curveball. I need you to throw a slider. Like it's so rarely he like basically gives enough loft on the passes and stuff, and I'm just like, all right, and that's why I say he's more of a thrower than a passer, just because he's not refined. So like if we could ever refine this arm strength. And then it's the accuracy on top of it. So like that whole situation, I'm like, if we could get that, just give me 20% better in that situation. And yeah, you could be an NFL starter for sure. I don't know where he's going to go. Like you're talking about his draft capital, it's all over the place. So if he goes to the right situation and learns behind a capable NFL quarterback in a good scheme, yeah, I think it could work out for him. But I think his arm strength is what gets him drafted at the end of the day. And because like we talk about, that's a truly elite tier of like itself. Like you don't find arm strength like this. So that alone, I'm like, yeah, I would draft this guy for sure, just and see if I can make it work. Because we all have the ego, like, oh yeah, I can fix it, I can do it. And you see NFL teams do this all the time with him. So I like a lot about what he does. I just like we talk about same thing with Rattler and Knicks. I just leave with more question marks about him as a player, and I'm like, all right, how good are you going to be at the NFL level? Because that's my main concern with him. It's like, if that does not improve, then your floor is just much lower as a player. But overall, yeah, I like what we talked about with him, the athleticism, the arm strength, some of the stuff along that as well. He's a big boy, throw the ball far. Like that's just, if my pitch for anybody in the NFL team, I was like, big boy, throw it far, check them both off, and we can go with that.
I do like that he at least cracked your top 10. But yeah, I'm enamored with what he could be. Maybe the draft capital is going to really check what I think about him, and he could end up falling on my list. But for right now, it's just, again, comparing him to Spencer Rattler, it's like, do I want the guy with the huge arm who's super athletic, or do I want this like, slow molasses, like, but for some reason people just can't tackle him, kind of like just like game manager-esque, like, underthrows the ball at times. Like, again, you said it perfectly. If you could mix those two guys, take Joe's speed and his arm, and then put it with Rattler's kind of like, ability to climb the pocket and his awareness and his accuracy, I feel like you'd have a perfect quarterback.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun if we could, be like chefs in a lab cooking it together. Be like, all right, this guy's going to be the first overall pick. We're done with him.
All right, we're getting real deep on this. Let's smash through these last couple of guys, get a couple honorables out, and get the hell out of here.
All right,
who do you have at 9 and 10? Give me both.
All right, so 1 second. So if I can pull him up, I'm blanking on his name because my brain is not working here. It's Michael Pratt, quarterback out of Tulane. The guy offers the potential to be a starting quarterback. And so I know some people are higher on him than I am. He played at Tulane, though. It's a smaller school, so you leave with a lot of questions like, all right, the competition you're playing against is really not that great. It took him a few years to finally crack the 60% completion percentage at, like, these lower schools. So, like, that's what I walk away with. But, like, the arm strength's good enough. The placement's good enough. He shows good timing and anticipation. When you put it all together, I'm like, there's enough here to work with. You can be a starting quarterback in the league. I don't think that's likely outcome, but we're talking about the QB like 9 here for me. So, it's a lot lower. And then the last guy is Jordan Travis, the quarterback out of Florida State. Like, I think he's going to be a borderline backup at the next level, but like, this is QB 10. This is kind of what we're doing with these guys. He offers enough good where you can be like, you know what? Bring him into the scheme. Let's see what happens. The arm strength's good enough. he has like his accuracy comes in waves, but when it hits, it's very nice. And he's athletic, right? You put that all together, it's kind of like you're out of a board of 5, you're getting like 2.5 stars, right? You're getting a few things that you like, a few things that you don't, but like there is a lot of inconsistency in his overall play. I mean, he had the last year, which was like really good. Like it wasn't the best from quarterback standards, but like he took them basically like national championship status. So he did enough to carry that team. So yeah, I like him at quarterback 10. And then it's like there's other guys. You talk about Hartman out of Notre Dame or these other players, but realistically, like we're getting into the weeds with these quarterback prospects because you have like an Austin Reed out of Western Kentucky, the Keaton Slovis who transferred to like 5 places out of BYU. There's a lot of guys in that range.
I'm doing the copacetic dance over here. People are like, why is this asshole dancing through Jesse's points? Because Jesse's carrying me right through the end of the show because I also had Michael Pratt and Jordan Travis as 9 and 10. We had those rankings exactly the same. We had the notes practically exactly the same. Michael Pratt, mid-round guy, lots of playing time against weaker strength of schedule. Smart passer, though, and good size quality, back up to above average starter, maybe at like his highest potential. And then Jordan Travis out of Florida State, 6'1", 200, a little bit undersized, part of the baby hands club. Also had 9-inch hands. And he's got quick throws and feet, though. He gives his guys a chance, which I like. Throws up a couple 50-50 balls, but like where his guy's in a position to make a play on it. And he had pretty tight mechanics in terms of like, I always like to look for guys that don't like take 17-step dropbacks, that get the ball out of their hands quick. When I say, tight mechanics, that's kind of the two things I'm really talking about. The way that you use your pocket. So those are some of the things I thought he did well comparatively to the rest of the guys on the list. Sam Handsome Hartman, he was number 1 on my quarterback hotness rankings because holy fuck is this man beautiful. But he did not crack the top 10 in terms of being an actual quarterback. However, if I was an NFL team, I would draft him with like a 6th-round pick to be I would just sign him to a 15-year backup contract. You are now the official model and spokesperson for this franchise. Whenever we're having press conferences, we need photo ops, any of that bullshit. We got fucking Sam Hartman in the building.
The best thing I've said about Sam Hartman is like you nailed that to a T. I said he's going to play a quarterback in a Lifetime movie. Like that's what he's going to be. Like he's a beautiful man. Like if you want a beautiful man, you take Sam Hartman. To actually be a starting quarterback, no chance in hell. But he'll play one in a movie for sure, and he'll do a good job.
The other two guys, you kind of talked about Austin Reed. I also had Devin Leary just kind of on the list. But the two guys that stood out to me, first of all, there's a lot of family coming into the league this year. We got McCaffrey's brother. We got Jerry Rice's son. And, hey, we got another Tagovailoa. Can't even say the fucking name right.
I know.
Taulia Tagovailoa, Maryland, through the Maryland transfer portal. He's kind of a speedy right-handed quarterback. He's 24 already, so he's in that little bit older club. But I guess he declared for the draft. So he's a guy to kind of keep an eye on because that name value is gonna get him drafted somewhere in the 5 to 7 rounds. And a guy that I liked, Keaton Slovis out of BYU. Again, when I look at the type of ceiling for him, Jared Goff-esque. I feel like if he falls in a very perfect situation, he's 6'2", 220. He actually runs a 4.55 40, which I thought was impressive. And he just makes some nice throws. He's definitely more of like a timing guy. He kind of needs, very much like Goff, where it's like you get guys in his face, it's going to fuck his whole game up. But that's why, to me, like, and I know I've been saying Jared Goff a lot on this show because that's like, to me, a good NFL starter where it's like, I think we all agree he's not like the best, but he's very like good. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, like there's certain guys where it's like, that's their absolute ceiling. They will never get past that. And so, but my Slovis was more of a direct comp to like his actual game mirrors a lot of what Jared Goff does and a lot of the same weaknesses. So I kind of, if he gets a chance as a backup, I could see him kind of slowly working those ranks. And maybe we hear about, Slovis as a starter in a couple of years. So he was just a guy I kind of wanted to throw in at the end there.
Yeah, like he's the guy who transferred from USC when Caleb went to Pittsburgh, then he went to BYU. He kind of did the circuit, as they say. And yeah, like there's stuff there that you like 100%. I just don't. I'm just like, you know what, it's fine. Like we'll work with it as a backup or a QB2.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason he's the last in the honorables. Like I would be taking like the other Tagovailoa. Hell, I would take Handsome and Sam Hartman again for the PR. Just the PR alone, I would take Hartman. Honestly, I would take Hartman over Rattler. Rattler is the cutoff for me of like I would take I would take Rattler as like the legend, but everybody below that, I would rather as an NFL owner have Sam Hartman in the building purely for PR reasons. Again, just as a spokesperson, a hair model, every time you're gonna have a stupid press conference or some shit, just have Sam Hartman there looking sexy as always.
Yeah, you can have him standing there just making you money just by people coming to the gates and they see him like, oh, that's a good looking man. He's like, yep, I'm Sam Hartman.
That's right. All right, Jesse, I appreciate you. We'll let you go. Just one more time for the people out there. Just let us know where we find all your good work.
Yeah, you can find all my work on X, aka Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days. JMoeller05. Any one of the sorry, I'm all over the place. YouTube JMoeller05. Instagram, the one and only JMO. All of our content is at the Fantasy Football Universe, so you can just go to fantasyfootballuniverse.com. If you want to go to Twitter, it's the Fantasy Football Universe. You'll see all of our content. We talk about these rookies, going into the draft, every fun thing, basically concerning Dynasty, redraft, the whole kit and caboodle, NFL. Like we're pretty much degenerates over there, so we're covering the whole thing. So yeah, go check it out over there. And yeah, I appreciate you having me, man. It was a pleasure.
Man, it's always a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us, slumming it through the top 10 quarterbacks with us. As always, make sure you guys go follow J Moeller 05 and at the FF Universe. And at the same time, if you made it this far in the show, may as well super kick that subscribe button for us. Maybe share the show around a little bit, and I will catch all you guys on the flip side.
He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man. Here comes